Okie doke, guys. Dr. Castillo, we are back. Today we're going to go over table talk and daily adjustment essentials. This is a really important training because this is what you'll be doing on a day-to-day basis, right? We're past the day 1/day 2 review of findings. Now patient is established. Let's say it's maybe day 2, right? So they've been to your clinic, but now we're just, they're in a treatment plan and they're coming in, and the interaction needs to be a little bit different of a tone, and also the vocabulary that you're using with them. It's short and sweet. So I'll give it to you right here. So patient walks in, hopefully front desk is probably greeting them. If not, and if you are the one that's greeting them, then it should be pretty straightforward. I mean, they're filling out forms, or they're going on a therapy, or we'll just keep it basic. They go straight into the treatment room and they're ready for their adjustment. So let's go straight there. Let's say they're sitting down in the room and then you enter. Okay. So this is typically what I say right when I walk in. I usually say their name, right? So I say name first. Easy, right? Let's say it's I'm gonna use a different name. Felicidad, right? That's a really, really cool name. Felicidad, which means happy. Just say, for example. So I start out with name, and then I say feliz. That's kind of funny, actually. I didn't plan that for this training specifically, but I say feliz, and then day of the week. So let's say your name was Felicidad. I would say, hola, buenos días, or buenas tardes. Felicidad. And then, well, feliz, boom, and then the day of the week. If it's Monday, I would say lunes. If it's Tuesday, I would say martes. If it's Wednesday, I would say miércoles. If it's Thursday, I would say jueves. If it's Friday, I would say viernes. And then if it's Saturday, I would say sábado. There we go. And then, so first you start with name. I mean, you could start with like a good morning or good afternoon. Buenas tardes, which would be a good afternoon. Those are easy ones, guys. But the most important thing is the name, right? Name. I go based off of principles that I found in through personal growth. I mean, we've all read that book, hopefully, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And we know that the sound of somebody's name is like music to their ears. So when you say their name, it means a big deal. So if you don't know how to say their name, make sure you know how to say it. Felicidad is a little bit tougher name, in my opinion. But common names are like Maria, Enriqueta, Felicidad, Maritza. I could go on and on. Isabel. We go on and on with names, but make sure you know how to say them all. Some of them are tough, so you can ask them like if you're saying it right. And like, let's say a name comes in, it's tough to say. You could say, it's correcto, no? Right? It's correct, right? And let's say you say, instead of felicidad, maybe you say felicidad. Felicidad, right? And then she's like, no. And then you say, it's correcto or no? Like, is that correct or no? And then let them speak it. You say it back and then repeat it. Hopefully you have it better for the next time. Or you can type it into Google Translate and it'll probably, click that little audio symbol in Google Translate and it'll probably like kick out the audio with the right accent too. So I know it's kind of a long drawn there, but names are important. So I go systematic. So I go name and then I say Feliz day of the week. If there are a couple sayings that I use. If I say Feliz jueves, which would mean Thursday, I might say es casi viernes. Feliz jueves, es casi viernes, which means hey, it's almost Friday. Or I might say feliz jueves, es casi viernes, no? that would be more informal, I would say. It's it's interesting. Like, I don't understand why, but it just is the way it is. But in the Spanish language, if you say no at the end of the sentence, it's proper. It's like, I don't know, I can't explain it. It's just a way of like asking a question, then like handing the ball to them, kind of like putting the ball in their court to respond. So if you were a patient and I walk up to you and it was Thursday, I might go, "Hey, feliz jueves, es casi viernes, no?" Right? And then the patient would, or you would probably say, "Sí, doctor, sí." And then I would go straight into the adjustment process. So if I want to do that, I would go, "Vamos a continuar con el proceso." We are going to continue with the process, right? Never a finished product, always a process, healing process. Vamos a continuar con el proceso. We're going to continue with the process and then go straight into it. So we'll scroll down a little bit. These are the standard boca abajo, face down. And typically, I mean, these are commands, guys. You're really commanding people. So typically right after a command, I will put please right at the end. So I'll do this. Boca abajo, por favor. As the first command, I'll do that. Sometimes they'll ask you, they'll kind of jump the gun, and they'll be like, ¿Qué necesito hacer? ¿Es boca arriba, boca abajo? You know, they'll kind of question you, like, what do I do? You know, so you just lead them and say boca abajo. And then after that, check where stuff is at. Typically, it's tough because for my PI work comp cases, I have to ask, like, how are they feeling? That's one of the questions I hate asking, but just to kind of see how they're doing. ¿Cómo te sientes en general? How are you feeling in general? Use this sparingly. I wouldn't use this all the time because if you get in the habit of asking it so many times, you're going to convey to them that chiropractic is about feeling, which it's actually not. It's about function. And so that's why during the re-exams, I'm talking about, hey, like your function is better, not just pain, but function. Look at this mobility, So if you're concerned about how they're feeling and it's a PI work comp, right? Because if they're feeling better, right, then I document that. And plus, it's a good thing just to ask, how are they doing during their treatments? But use that sparingly because from a psychology perspective, we don't want to train our patients to think that it's all about feeling. So use that one. I like to use that one while they're on the table. If I'm palpating, sometimes I'll say, yo siento dolor aquí. Or it could be yo siento tensión aquí. I don't need to translate those. Just I feel pain here, or I feel tension here. Yo siento dolor aquí, right? And sometimes they'll be like, sí, doctor, sí. I mean, we've been doing this for a while. Hopefully, if you're watching this, you're more experienced doc, so you can tell when patients are in pain. Plus, they might wince too. So, the thing that you're trying to convey to them is like, hey, you know what you're doing. You see something, maybe you feel something that isn't moving properly. So you say, oh, yo siento tensión aquí, and then right at that point, you ask them, respire, which is breathe in, and then suéltelo. Let it all out. So those are the commands that I use. I don't say please after those, so that it's just respire, suéltelo. And I wait till I can hear that audibly, right? Respire, suéltelo. And I'll breathe with them typically too, just so they know what I'm trying to get across. So especially for those beginner patients, but once they get in the habit, like they know what you're doing. So after the adjustment, you can say a couple things. You can say excelente if you feel like it went really well. You can say bien ajuste. You can say perfecto, which is perfect. This is one of my favorites. A little bit more informal. But if you remember, I don't know if I've said this during a previous training, but sometimes patients, when they come in, I've had this happen. I've had new patients come in, they just walk in and they're just like, quiero un tronado de mis huesos. Quiero un tronado. Tronado means turn. So the root verb is tronar, which means to turn. So basically, they'll walk in and be like, quiero un tronado de mis huesos. I want somebody to just twist my bones. I use a version of that verb, tronar, during an adjustment. Let's say like 20 vertebrae move during the adjustment. I might say after the adjustment, boom. I'll say mucho you can say tronaron, no? Or you can say mucho tronó, no? Which is basically saying like, that was a lot of movement, wasn't it? And they'll be like, yeah, that was a lot. And that's a really connecting phrase because I have heard that time and time and time again. I've never heard that in a Spanish class. I've always heard that like in a chiropractic setting, patient walks in, it's kind of like street talk when people are talking about chiropractic. So I think that's a very novel phrase that you'll be able to use if like a ton of vertebrae move and it was a good adjustment. So you can always just say nothing too. Respire, suéltelo, and then move on to the next one. That's also appropriate as well. So the next one would be del lado para acá. And I always use my hands, even though they're understanding me. It's very much like habit for me to use my hands. So if I'm I'm turning to myself, I say del lado para acá. And then if I want them to go the other side, I say del lado para allá, right? And I'll point or I'll lead. Oh, there it is. The side towards me. Or del lado para allá. Side away from me. And at the end of the day, let's say you can do a couple things. If they go to the other side that you don't want them, you can say, oh, al revés, por favor. Al revés, which means the reverse. Like the reverse, please, or the opposite. And they'll understand, as long as you're using your hands and using your words, you'll be just fine. If you do the breathe in, breathe out for the side posture, that's fine too as well. But me specifically, I don't do breathe in, breathe out. So after that, you'll probably ask them to go face up. So we got boca arriba. Feel free to roll the R's if you like to. I'll kind of say it like this, boca arriba. You can kind of play around with the speed of your speech during a treatment room because I don't know, I just think it doesn't have to be the same speed. In fact, like sometimes I'll go a little bit slower just so I'm able to practice my pronunciation. Patients really don't know it, but I do it because at the end of the day, like you want to also be practicing your Spanish. So, and being very conscientious of what you're saying. So let's say I say it without the R, it'd be boca arriba. If I want to say it with the R, boca arriba. Let's say I'm practicing my R's, I might go boca arriba, por favor, right? I might slow it down a little bit. So it just depends on what you like and what you're feeling. The slower you speak, the more powerful I feel that you'll come across. So even just the way that you do your commands will convey how comfortable you are with Spanish and how comfortable you are with the culture. So definitely kind of play around with that and kind of gauge how the patient responds, because that can make a big difference in terms of the whole experience for them. So after their boca arriba, this is going to be really important because sometimes patients are not tense. Even the ones that listen to me when I'm saying like, relax, relax. Sometimes they have like these subconscious head movements that are just preventing us from executing the adjustment. So there are a couple tricks that I use. So I'm going to go over those right here. Easy to do in English, but there's a way to do it in Spanish. So I'll show you. So boca arriba, let's say, you know, they're just really tight. They're really tight and they're really tense and they don't know what you're going to do. So I'll just tell them what I'm going to do first. So first is palpation, but I'm not going to tell them I'm doing palpation. I'll say, estoy, this is while I'm doing it. Estoy chequeando los músculos. Okay. I am checking the muscles. Okay. And so then they know, oh, okay. So we're not adjusting. We're just checking muscles. And then they usually kind of like let go a lot. And then I'm able to kind of do like maybe a little soft tissue work. I might use CBD cream. If not, I'm just doing palpation. So let's say I'm doing some palpation and I feel one spot, and I might tell them, oh, yo siento aquí. I feel right here. Yo siento aquí. I kind of did that backwards. Yo siento aquí, right? And the patient will probably like nod with you, like, oh yeah, I feel that too. We do this stuff in English, but this is how you do it in Spanish. It's pretty easy. So yo siento aquí. And then if you want to tell them what you're doing, you can say, like, let's say you're doing a standard one that I do is I do a lateral flexion, tiny bit of rotation, and then I say forcita, which means little force aquí, which is right here. So I might say, primero, doblando así, which means first, bending like this, right? And you need to be calm, you need to be confident, and then you'll transfer that feeling over to them. So primero doblando así, right? You're just doing it. Then I say poquito de rotación. Force right here. Okay, so primero doblando así. Let's say that. They could be it could be a seated position, it could be a supine position. Either way, you're probably doing the bending, poquito de rotación. And then I actually palpate here, una fuercita aquí, okay? Right? And then I just say, relax, relájate, relaja. You can say relájate, relájate, relax. You can also say flojo. I've seen a huesero online say this. I'm like, that's genius. And I usually do it two things. So I will relax with my hands. So sometimes I might tap on one side and then hit it. I might say relájate, which means relax, or I might say flojo, which means lazy, lazy. It's so crazy. I saw this online with a huesero. He's on YouTube. He's pretty well known, and I mean, it's just crazy. Like, so many views and very interesting chiropractic moves. He says he does chiropractic, but I don't think he does. But either way, like, tons of people see him and apparently gets good results. Anyways, I'm watching him while he's doing his process, and he says flojo. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I'll steal that, and it works really well. So that's a phrase that works really well. Relájate and then flojo, which means lazy. After that, let's say adjustment goes well, we could say, right? You can go all the way back up and kind of review those. Bien ajuste, excelente, Perfecto. That's it, you know? Doesn't have to be anything crazy. After that, I will lead the patient to the front desk and then let them know when their first, or their, sorry, not their first, their next appointment is. So I'll say this. Bien ajuste hasta, let's say their next appointment is tomorrow. Hasta, nah, we'll say the next week. Hasta la próxima semana, which means good adjustment until the next week. And if I want to point them to the right day, I might go hasta, or yeah, hasta, and then blank, which means until day of the week. Until then, that's it. I might actually tell them too, like, not just that, but like if it's want to say I have a great day, que tenga un buen día. Have a great day. I will use that pretty much every single time. And patients are probably sick of that, but I don't care. That's one of the most common ones that I use. If I don't use that, I'll just say hasta la próxima cita, which is until the next appointment. Or I'll tell them tienes una cita la próxima semana, okay? Tienes una cita la próxima semana, okay? Which means you have an appointment the next week. Okay. Guys, if you can be super, if you can just lead, they will follow you. I feel that my Spanish speakers are just more, it's not like it's just they don't question chiropractic. They don't question me as much as English speakers. And I don't know if that's a personal problem. Or it's because I don't see a lot of English speakers, but for me personally, I just feel that the skepticism factor is a lot less in the Hispanic community. So for me, I feel free to just tell them what the recommendation is. And I know that I don't have to back it up with a lot of like coercion or anything, or I don't have to manage a lot of objections when it comes to continuing on a maintenance care or scheduling the next appointment. And if they do come up with objections, meaning they don't come in, I mean, we recall those guys. You know, I'll actually call them and say like, hey, you had an appointment last week. You need to come in. In fact, you need to make up 2 appointments, and they'll do it. You know, sometimes time is an issue, but I just want to let you know that on the hind end of the appointment, if you do a really good job of leading the patient, that will make sure, or it'll increase the chances of them actually coming back versus saying, "Oh, great adjustment." You know, so really have an authoritative but also kind tone when you're doing it, and lead the patient, because it's their life in your hands and you're responsible for their spinal health. So that's what I got to say about that. Something I've noticed with the Spanish community. So after you've gotten to the next appointment, hopefully you'll hand them off to the front desk, or you yourself will make the next appointment. Adios, que tenga un buen día. You can also say hasta luego. You are good to go. See you later. Also, just pay attention. You know, like if I got somebody that says ciao, I'm just being weird. That's a really informal way, but listen to what they say to you when they're saying goodbye, and then just take a note, like an auditory note, like, oh, okay, I'll say that to them next time. because if you can mirror their communication, because different areas of, you know, Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, like there are different like colloquialisms, like ways that they say hello and ways that they say goodbye. If you can pick up on those and make a quick note on their account, like, oh, they say goodbye like this, then if you say goodbye like that, they'll be like, ah, he's paying attention. You know, he's paying attention to the small details of how I like to say goodbye. I really like that. I really vibe with that. I'll give you a quick example. I had a guy come in from not Costa Rica. He uses a phrase from Costa Rica. This guy's from Honduras. Okay. By the way, like people from Honduras, if they make their way to Minnesota, like they have to traverse like so many borders. It's insane. And obviously, you know, this guy's undocumented. So he's been here for like a couple years, and he's sharing with me some of the cool ways that he says hello. And I'll type it out here. I'll say, hey, ¿cómo estás? Right? Or ¿qué dices? ¿Qué dices? That's probably one of my most favorite ones. What do you say? And he'll say, pura vida, which means pure life or living the life. That's a Costa Rican phrase. There's no way you're going to hear that in Mexico. No way you're going to hear that in Guatemala. The only place you're going to hear that is somewhere like Honduras or Costa Rica. And these two guys, they were brother, or I think they were friends, close friends. They would come in and they would say that every time. So if they ask me, ¿Cómo estás? Guess what I'm going to say? Pura vida. Or sometimes I might say like, pura vida, no? Like, that's how we say it, right? Pura vida, no? Like, I said that right? And then they'll just laugh and they light up and they're like, okay, so he gets us, you know, he gets the culture. So there's a lot more that comes into the Spanish language. It's about mirroring, it's about learning, respecting, being open-minded so that you're able to connect with the patient on their level. And it doesn't have to be crazy. It's not like I'm demonstrating to them that I can speak fluid sentences. They're just kind of like little phrases here and there that I'm able to say. And then after that, the experience is done, you know, 2-3 minutes in the room and we're done. So not a ton of conversation needs to take place. If you do want to, you can ask them like this. You don't have to continue the conversation. ¿Cómo está la familia? How is the family? And then they'll usually say like, bien, gracias a Dios, which means good, thanks to God. And they can say, oh, okay, que bueno, que bueno, que bueno. Say que bueno like 1 or 2 times, and then you can go boca abajo, vamos a continuar. You can also say if it's a guy, or typically guys, they talk about their work. ¿Cómo está el trabajo? Or you can say mucho trabajo hoy. Says, how is the job? A lot of work today. A lot of work today. Kind of did that different. Hey, ¿cómo está el trabajo? Bien. Okay, excelente. Boca abajo, por favor. Vamos a continuar. Or I might say, hey, mucho trabajo hoy. A lot of work today. Oh, qué bueno, qué bueno. Boca abajo, por favor. Right, I go straight into it. So they're just like really basic questions that I ask patients, and that's about it. I don't go crazy, guys. I'm there to adjust their spine, not to be their friend and all that stuff. So that's all I want to lay on to you. That's a pretty decent training right there. If you use this system that I have, you know, the name, Feliz, day of the week. If it's like, this is another good one, I'll show you. Es viernes y el cuerpo lo sabe. It's Friday and the body knows it. If you use that, man, that's like a gold mine phrase right there. If you say that on Friday, that's like, that's for people that are like in the community. So if you can say that, like they're gonna trust you way more, because that's what they say. And once again, like I just get fired up about this. Like, you will not find this in a classroom. Like, what the heck? Like, they should, why do they not teach this? Because if you go to a culture and you learn basics, but you don't learn like the cultural language, like they're gonna look at you like, what, did you just learn Spanish or what? Whereas if you speak this, they'll be like, oh, this is great. The doctor knows our phrasing. That's awesome. Like they'll get super excited. They'll say something like eso, which means like, hey, that's awesome. Eso is something that means like, hey, yeah, awesome. So look for that. When you hear eso, that means that you're building a lot of rapport. So I'm gonna sign off, guys. Those are the kind of like the table talk daily adjustment essentials that you'll be able to use during the treatment room stuff. And that's all I got. So until the next time, you have an awesome and blessed day. Next time we'll go over how to do some x-ray stuff.